Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Eric Hansen from OTT X, and on behalf of the whole team here at the good ship OTT X, whether you are watching live on demand or tuning in via podcast, we are glad you're here. This is episode 4 of OTT X's series, The Buzz, where we invite leaders, experts, prognosticators, pontificators, and rabble-rousers of this streaming world to get together, share their thoughts about what's going on in streaming today, right now. I want to make sure to mention that you can find and subscribe to all episodes of The Buzz via podcast on Spotify. So just search for OTTX. Be sure to follow us so you'll receive all future episodes as well. With that, I'm thrilled to welcome this episode's moderator and a great partner to OTTX for many years, Bruce Eisen, attorney at Eisen Law. Bruce is a veteran attorney and media executive whose legal practice focuses on the intersection of new and traditional media and the technology powering them. Some of Bruce's current and recent clients include Shot Factory, RLJ Entertainment, Brainstorm Media, Zumo, Cinetime, Cineverse, Comcast, and Fuse. Welcome, Bruce.
All right. Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it. Welcome, everyone, for being here. We're going to have a great panel today. I'm going to ask each of them to start their video, take a minute or two, introduce yourself, and then I'll go into what we're going to talk about, and then it'll be a free-for-all for everybody to fight it out. Mr. Pachter, why don't you start?
Thank you, Bruce. Michael Pachter. I'm a research analyst with Wedbush Securities. Often wrong, never in doubt, and I am far more entertaining than I am enlightening.
Richard?
Richard Wolpert. I'm CEO and chairman of Ocean Life Network. My background's in tech and media. Was on the original Mac team at Apple, started Disney Online in the mid-90s. Dealt a lot with music industry nonsense in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's somewhat evocative of what's happening today in media.
Thank you. Srini?
Hi, I'm Srini, K.A. I'm the co-founder and chief revenue officer at Amagi. Amagi is a technology company that helps television networks, content owners to create fast channels, distribute them, and monetize them. We work with close to 1,000 media brands, so very closely involved in the industry. We also have a content marketplace that allows these content partners to find new distribution and an ads marketplace to help monetize those. So glad to be here.
Thank you very much. Michael Smith.
Hi, I'm Michael Smith. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for NPR. Been in the business a long time. Started out on the distribution side with CBS Television, trying to sell TV shows to local TV stations, worked for the Disney Channel in marketing and branding, worked for Food Network, also in marketing, and then got into programming and content creation, launched a network called the Cooking Channel, then got into launching streaming services for the Scripps Interactive company, which then eventually was acquired by Discovery. And now I'm working on the digital transition for one of the oldest radio companies, NPR, as we move into podcasting and more on demand.
Excellent, thank you. So today I was thinking we should talk about streaming, of course, and there's a lot going on there in terms of, is it going down? Is it going up? What are the implications for traditional media? We've all seen the news this week about Charter and Disney. We're going to get to all of that. But first, the strike. The strike. So as we probably all know, it's the first dual work stoppage in 63 years. In 1988, the Writers Guild went out. That was the longest strike in history, in Hollywood history. That was 154 days. Right now, the Guild is out this year, 134 days. So hopefully we don't beat the record, but we might. In terms of the SAG, the longest one there was 6 months back in 2000, and right now we're at 2 months. So again, hopefully we don't beat that record. But there's two main issues, I think, for both of the guilds, putting aside money, which is always the issue. AI and usage data, especially for the streamers. And I want to touch on the first one first. The studios and the streamers are basically saying, no, 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 it's all mine. I'm not sharing the usage data with you. Why? I mean, data has been shared forever. Nielsen has been around, forever, sharing data. The movie studios share the opening weekend data. It's all public. What's the difference here, and why are they not willing to do it? And why do the guilds care? Who would like to step into the firing line first? All right, Michael.
The answer is Reed Hastings said so. And Reed is the proverbial emperor with no clothes who happens to be a visionary and gets most things right. When he gets them wrong, he gets them horrifically wrong, but he has managed to surround himself with sycophants who refuse to challenge anything he says. So somehow Netflix has deluded itself into believing that its viewership data is proprietary, and that if anybody had access to that, they would emulate all the phenomenal hits that Netflix has produced, and so Netflix would be competed, out of existence. That's just ridiculous. The fact is that there's nothing original on Netflix that hasn't been done before, and most of Netflix's big hits, like Selling Sunset, are blatant ripoffs of successful cable TV shows. They are required by law in France to divulge that data, and they do. So somehow it doesn't hurt them in France, but it would hurt them in the rest of the world. It's just idiotic. And he's got his heels dug in. I'm really curious to see if Ted Sarandos' desire to be liked is greater than Ted Sarandos' fealty to Reed Hastings, because I think Netflix caves on this issue. And to be honest, if you are a content creator, you deserve to get paid as your content is consumed. Srini can talk about, the ad market. Advertisers need that. So, clearly the creators need that. It's going to happen. It's just a question of whether Netflix blinks first or somebody else does. Amazon could really win some friends by stepping up and saying, sure, we'll share our viewership data.
Hey,
Yeah,
Michael, listen, for purposes of this, don't be subtle, all right? Because I'm concerned our users may not really follow with what you're saying. Be upfront about how you feel about it.
By the way, I'm a KCRW angel for 41 years, and everything I know I learned from listening to NPR.
So I have to address what Michael said about Reed being horrifically wrong. I would like to be as horrifically wrong as Reed has been for the last 25 years, since they were selling DVDs by mail.
I said he's a visionary and mostly right, just on this one.
Yes. Just talking about the strike at a high level, I've been thinking about this. To me, it feels like traditional Hollywood is living in an estate with a mansion and a guest house, and both are on fire. And they're arguing over who gets the mansion and who gets the guest house, instead of putting out the fire and figuring out where the future is. So I think it's a horrible thing for all sides. And why? Nielsen reported in July, for the first time, cable and network television was less than 50% of all TV viewed. So cable and broadcast is hurting. Streaming services are down. The paid services, we're going to talk about that. Fast TV is kind of a shining star in the space, but they're in a, you talked about last time both were in strike was 60 years ago, which was in the 1960s, which was a heyday of television. This is not the golden era of television, right? This is the era of cord cutting, and their house is on fire, and they're not paying attention to the real danger.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you. If I were to take a slightly different look at this, right? Think about the distributors all along, right? The Comcast and the Dish TVs of the world. They never used to share data. Nielsen, a third party, primarily because of advertising demand at some level, had a currency that could independently measure and actually provide that. I've heard from tons and tons of content owners as to when they go into discussions with these distributors, they would actually have paper that wouldn't even show how many real subs that you had specifically, right? So again, given a choice, and given that the SVOD streamers didn't need advertising, they've grown on subscription, they didn't need to share the data. if always given a choice, I think the natural tendency of any distributor is to keep the data close to themselves. I think, and the industry level initiative or a regulatory initiative is needed to actually force them to share data. To your point, Bruce, whether it's France because of regulation or otherwise, I think that's the natural tendency. You have to fight against the tendency to actually make that much more open. And we are seeing this at some level. There is the bigger underlying, I wouldn't call it a dispute, concern happening in the FAST industry between content owners and platforms as to what level of data sharing should be there. And that's an advertising driven industry, if you think about it.
But they all now, I think all, certainly most, have an ad-supported component. So doesn't that change things? And how? And how do they do it? How come the advertisers aren't saying, where's the data?
One big difference between advertising on ad-supported streaming, the ads it's on-demand streaming. It doesn't matter what you're watching. It matters whether they delivered the ad. So it's the same thing as internet advertising, where all that the site, Google or whomever, delivers to the advertiser is impressions. So if the advertiser wants 1,000 impressions, he's going to get them on Netflix, and he shouldn't really care what you're watching as long as Netflix can say it's a Viagra ad, so it was a bunch of 50-plus-year-old men. Short of that, it doesn't matter if they're watching Stranger Things or Selling Sunset.
Do you really believe that, Michael? I mean, you don't think that an advertiser would like to know which show they were on?
I'm sure that they can tell them, we showed your ad 14 times on this show and 3 times on that show and 10 times on that show, and here's the audience demographics look like. But they'll just say 55,000 impressions, and those 55,000 people, were all men over 50 who need Viagra or whatever they're advertising. Obviously, there are brands that want to reach a certain consumer, but if Netflix can show them that they did it, fine. They're not going to show it to the studios. And again, this is Reed Hastings. Nobody should care how many people watch Bird Box, and they'll give you that. But go ahead.
Well,
sorry.
Michael Smith, go, please.
Say, as a person who buys a lot of advertising, I think that what advertisers want is some attribution to how effective their campaigns are, and distributors do provide that on an individual campaign by campaign basis, on a proprietary basis between the buyer and the agency. So Netflix is doing that. They're not making that public to the producers or to the world, but they are working with their clients and giving them attribution data. So that's fine. But I think, to the point that was made before about distributors not sharing data, yeah, I don't think Reed is crazy. I think it's very clear. I mean, Walmart doesn't publicly share sales data with their companies. No distributor does. All stuff is measured by third parties, whether it's MRI, Simmons, Nielsen. All producers of products have to get that data from JD Power, from other places. So that's just the way business tends to work. And so I think Netflix's position is, we are a mega distributor, a mega Walmart. And we're just going to be the way that every other major distributor is. We don't share, we don't open our books to the people's products who we sell. So I don't think that's unusual. And it's also a great leverage point for them in the negotiations. That why give that away right away? Use that as a last resort chip to give a little bit of that. And I think the strike is going to go on for a really long time. I think it might go on for over a year or even more, because when you think about the 1960 strike or the 1988 strike, we were in a world where when you stopped production and writing and production of TV, for the consumer, it went dark. I mean, the TV was live. So if there wasn't another episode of The Tonight Show or an episode of, Magnum PI, you were screwed. But, there are about 800,000 shows on demand in the cloud available for people to watch. So the consumer impact is not going to be as dramatic. And I think, almost half of the top 20 streaming shows are shows, library shows. So the consumer is not going to clamor and pressure the media companies to end this. So I think they have the leverage to be able to ride this out as long as possible. And then the other point is that they've all been trying to cut content costs, because the problem with streaming was that the pricing is too low and the content investment was too high. What better way to cut content costs and sort of rebalance, your EBITDA by not making any content for a while? This is a correction to the peak TV bubble.
So
I think-
Michael, is this your conspiracy theorist that the strikes are manufactured by the studios to not have to pay for content to get their costs down?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the silver lining, is that they all went over their skis trying to chase Netflix and Netflix's stock price and spent too much. It's almost like they pre-spent too much on content. This is a way to correct that and cut content investments for the next couple of years and re-rationalize the market.
Makes sense, but I mean, what was it? I think this week or last week, Warner announced they got their revenue is going to be cut by $300 to $500 million as a result of this. Wall Street doesn't like to see that kind of news. So how does that? And they can't be alone. I mean, they're the only ones I think that announced such a thing, but they can't be alone. And how does that play out vis-a-vis, Michael, to your point of, let's cut our costs, right? Because they're also somewhat, I think, cutting their nose.
Well, it depends. It's different. It's different by player. I mean, Warner is a big content producer, so their production side is going to hurt, but their cost side for feeding HBO and feeding Max is going to offset that. So they're going to be in good, and it's going to vary. The less exposure you have in the content creation space, the better off you'll be. So Netflix is in the catbird seat because they don't make money from making content and selling it to other people. So for them, the decrease in content spend because of the strike drops 100% to their bottom line.
I don't know if it's quite as nefarious as this was a plan, Michael, to reduce costs. To your point, Bruce, the revenue for most of these SVOD services was on the decline well before the strike, right? They all exploded during COVID. Right, Disney Plus launched during COVID and hit its 5-year projection in 8 months, and thought that party was going to go on forever, and it didn't. Right, the COVID ended, the stimulus checks ended, inflation hit, people had signed up for too many SVOD services, and they're canceling them, and that well predates the strike. And we saw, why is Netflix doing ad-supported and password crackdown? Because their premium service subscription was down. And we're going to talk about churn later, but HBO, their numbers are down. All of their numbers are down well before the strike. So may it help them as a silver lining, Michael? I agree, but I don't know if it's as nefarious as a plan to cut costs. And, it's not, their revenue's not down yet because of the strikes. I mean, they still had new content coming to the system, but now it's going to start to slow down dramatically.
And Bruce, to your earlier point, right? I'm not sure. I mean, Michael can probably talk to that. I think the Wall Street doesn't care about revenue as much as profitability now. So even if your revenue is down and you're still showing that I'm actually getting more profitable, that's not a bad thing from a Wall Street perspective.
Right.
I actually don't agree with that. I think Wall Street cares about sustainability of that profit stream. And so there is no such maxim as saving your way to prosperity. That doesn't work. If your core business is declining, you can't cut costs fast enough. And I actually just got in a Twitter fight with one of the idiots that owns GameStop because he's like, well, they'll just close stores with no impact on revenue. Like, they don't understand that that's the way to go out of business. Cable's going out of business. And Bruce, this is on your outline. Cable is going away, and moving from cable to on demand is really dumb. And the way to stop that, because again, the average cable bill is about $85. The average cable household watches about $65 worth of ads. So it's $150 per month. And to replace that with 15 is idiotic. So the way to preserve that is keep the content on cable and keep it away from streaming. And yet everybody's just dived headfirst off the cliff into streaming. So we've got these guys saying to the actors and the writers, we are losing money because we're idiots, and you have to bear the brunt of that and continue to provide your content for less money because we're idiots. Now, Michael Smith, you're right that they do believe they're saving their way to prosperity. I used to think Zaslav was a smart guy. I'm beginning to question that. I used to think Iger was the smartest guy in Hollywood. I'm definitely questioning that. The way for this to actually work is settle the strike and make less crap content. Like, just quit making crap. And if they could figure that out, They could afford to pay the actors and writers. But the solution that no, actor, come in for one day, we'll pay you scale, we'll create an AI generated image of you and use it in perpetuity is just wrong. It's unethical. It's immoral. It's not going to work. And the actors are never going to give that up. I think the writers are kind of silly that they think that AI is going to write a script that consumers will like, but whatever. The studios have to give that up. And I completely agree with Michael and Srini that Netflix is in pole position. They are the biggest winner on all this because they spend the least on US content and they get their content from everywhere else. But they are the ones who should settle this because Ted Sarandos will then be the first place every actor and writer goes to sign their next deal. And they can get a huge competitive advantage by being the good guys and burning everybody else. I think Ted's smart enough, but Reed might stop him. I know that Amazon's smart enough. So I really think a streaming service is going to step up and solve this problem. I think it's going to happen way sooner than you guys do. September was an important month because that's when broadcast starts. That's when the new season starts. We've already blown the upfronts. We're not getting to January. The networks can't allow that. I think Netflix or Amazon steps in and settles this thing November, December. That's my call.
Michael,
See,
I love the way,
thought
I love the way Michael calls out executives, and they're all idiots. You know,
well, they use. I mean, look, they're
I think
idiotic in some ways. All of them. I mean, everybody is not good at everything. Except for
I think Bob Iger.
Jobs.
I think Bob Iger. I worked with him a little when I was there, and he was running ABC. I think he is one of the smartest guys in Hollywood. He walked back into a shit show. I mean, that's the issue. And, you know, if you pay attention, everybody thinks he's mostly positioning it for sale to Apple. Regarding who the winner is, you know, Michael, you didn't mention them, and I'm surprised because you are a smart guy, so maybe not as smart as I thought. But I think the big winner here is YouTube, right? Last year, YouTube's revenue was $30 billion, and Netflix's revenue was $30 billion, and Netflix spent $16 billion on production that YouTube did not spend. And I think YouTube is the biggest winner here.
I have to be honest. I of all the tech executives out there, I think Sundar Pichai is the worst. So I don't think they'll ever figure it out. I agree with you. Their assets are great. They're really bad at YouTube TV. They have no idea what they're doing. They're pretty bad at everything that they didn't invent. YouTube is the one thing they bought that works okay, but they're not visionary enough to figure this shit out. And I'm saying this because I am the world's leading authority on video games. They absolutely sucked at that, and they threw a lot of money at it, and they suck. They'll never figure this out. They have the wrong people. So agreed, great assets, but no, not visionary. Netflix is smart to figure this out.
Well, to Richard's point, though, no, I think that YouTube is the big winner, and I think that that's the thing people aren't realizing is that the biggest threat to the scripted TV business to me is not just these problems of streaming versus cable and bad decisions and crap product, is the fact that the kind of content that young people are interested in consuming is now totally different. It's been totally. It reminds me of what happened in the music industry when synthesizers and electronic creation came in. It was like people who played traditional instruments were like, we're fine. No one's ever going to want to listen to a song created on a beatbox. And all of a sudden, that's it. So I remember people saying, well, no one's ever going to want to watch some show done by some silly influencer. But I have an 8-year-old daughter. She doesn't watch Nickelodeon. She doesn't watch Disney Channel. She doesn't even watch Disney movies. She watches crazy YouTubers from Ukraine. So to me, that is the biggest fear, that while the traditional business is fighting amongst each other, the majority of TV viewing is going to the creator economy and to totally new forms of entertainment. And so this may not even matter because most Gen Zs are not going to be watching Succession type shows. They're going to be watching stuff created by Mr. Beast. And that's just a place where the traditional business isn't even playing. And who's the winner when everyone's watching user-generated content? It is Google. It is TikTok.
And Mr. Beast is not in the traditional Hollywood union system in any way, nor are any of the YouTube creators.
Let's move into this streaming. As we've discussed on this call, revenue is going down. Part of it is people are leaving the house, COVID is over. Part of it is they overspent. But is there more to the story than that? Or is that the entire story?
No, I think, Bruce, obviously media is going through a massive transformation, right? As consumers are moving from traditional linear to streaming. And I think in every transformation, we have seen this when internet came in, we've seen this with mobile. Every transformation, people overinvest initially, thinking that it's going to be the next big thing. And then, few years later, you find that you're overinvested, you have to, readjust, you do cutbacks, and then you hit a low, and then the industry builds back to a much higher level over the long term. So I'm super positive about where streaming would be in the long term. I think it just is, this euphoria in the short term that's actually hurting us. And I feel it'll come back to a much, much larger level.
I mean, right now, there's, I don't even know how many tons of different streaming channels and networks and so forth. And to me, it seems it is not sustainable. And if we look at the cable industry, a lot of those smaller channels are there because they're being subsidized, right? Because the conglomerates are selling them. If you want ESPN, you got to take Disney number 15. And so it's being subsidized. With streaming, you don't have that. Everybody can just watch, pay for whatever they want. Churn, I think is through the roof with streaming because, listen, I'll be honest. All of those streaming services, they've got one or two shows I want to watch. I sign up, I watch the series, I cancel it. I don't need to keep paying $15 a month the rest of the year. I watched what I want. They had 2 shows. Next year, when they have another one, I'll sign up again. That's not sustainable, I don't think, for a large mass of content. Michael,
hasn't that been the history of entertainment, though, that you bundle things that are less interesting with things that are more interesting? I mean, think about the CD and the record album. How many times did you buy a record album that had 1 song that you liked and 11 songs that you didn't?
I agree. You're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. But that's the point. Streaming is doing away with the bundle. Right, because
but streaming is a bundle. Think about, do you watch every single show on Netflix?
The only reason I have Netflix is because my 14-year-old wants it. And that's the only reason we have Hulu. But other than that, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Disney, whatever else, again, they don't have enough content in there. So we watch it sign up for a month if we don't get the free trial, and then we're done. Whereas with cable TV, Michael, I'm going to get you in 30 seconds or less. When you sign up for the gold package or the bronze or the silver, I'm getting all this content I don't want, but I have no choice. Mr. Pachter, take it away.
I think Michael Smith's analogy to music is right. I think his conclusion leaves out that we still listen to traditional music. So we still listen to classical and jazz, not as much because we have the synthesized music and dance music, and you can add every genre. But I think the better analogy is television to movie theaters. Back in the 1940s and before, the only way to consume video content was in a theater. And once TV emerged, and then we got all the different windows beyond that, viewership of a film, of professional content, expanded dramatically. So, back in the day, Fantasia or Gone with the Wind maybe sold 100 million tickets. And now a new movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy or Avengers will have 1 billion views. So, or more, 2 billion by the time they're done. So I actually think streaming is a window to that. It's just not new, it's been around 10 years, but it's a newer distribution method. It's going to capture eyeballs. I think YouTube is a newer form factor, newer type of content. And what happens is our consumption of films 100 years ago was per capita 10 hours a year, 20. And now our consumption of video content is 200 hours a month. I mean, I don't know what it is, a lot. Mm-hmm. So I think that streaming has a place in that. But Bruce, your comment about bundling and Netflix has 1 or 2 shows, I think the biggest problem with streaming services is they operate independently of one another. And none of us knows which channel anything's on. So someone told me to watch Jury Duty. I said, what channel, what streaming service? They said Netflix. It took me 2 minutes to discover it wasn't on Netflix. I have a Roku device. So fortunately, I just typed it in Roku. It was on Freevee at the time, which I didn't have. So I added the app, I watched the show, now it's on Amazon Prime. We need to bundle solely for discovery purposes, and they don't have to be bundled economically. Everybody should share all their program data. I mean, Gemstar was the way we found TV shows. They should come up with something like TV Guide. I mean, it's a serious problem. And on bundles, I have the Weather Channel. I watched it when the tropical storm was heading to Southern California. The first time I've watched it in 30 years that I've subscribed to it. I have the Tennis Channel. I literally had a friend over who wanted to watch, some match in the French Open. There it was. I have the Golf Channel. My late father-in-law used to watch it. Same with Speed Vision. You have these things as an emergency in case somebody in the household watches, but cable works because my wife watches Bravo, I watch ESPN, the kids watch Nickelodeon. It works because we all have our little niche things that we like. And I actually think if you put streaming together in a bundle, it'll work. If the studio executives I called stupid were indeed smart, they would say Comcast, the home of Netflix, Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, HBO Max, or Max. And they would bundle all there, take $1 per subscription, and the streaming guys would embrace that. That's going to happen. It's just going to be, we need the first guy to figure that out. I agree with you, Richard.
Isn't that the Charter deal? I mean, that was the first step. The Charter, the deal that Disney just did with Charter allows Charter now to distribute Disney Plus as a part of the package,
and that's essential. I mean, you've seen a remote control, a Comcast remote with a Netflix button on it. We all have. We've been in hotel rooms or whatever. Why don't they all have that? Why doesn't every remote have every service button on it? My God, that's how you expand your footprint. And then the Comcast Gemstar TV Guide or Charter, their TV Guide, is the one that tells you what's available on streaming. You'll find it with a search.
Michael, you also said cable is dying. Cable is dying, right?
It is.
Cord-cutting is real. Cable's dying.
Movie theaters have been dying for 75 years.
And they're dying at a super accelerated rate since COVID.
Correct.
So, I think we can't forget that. I do think there is a music sort of video entertainment analogy that is relevant. So I was very in the middle of everything that was happening with music in the late 90s and the early 2000s as Napster raged and Kazaa came out. I was deposed in the Napster case, and all the labels wanted to do was shut it down. They didn't like streaming. They liked selling their CDs. They didn't want to do it. They did it kicking and screaming, no pun intended, kicking and streaming. And their revenue went into a hole for almost 20 years. They just got back 2 years ago to the revenue they had pre-Napster. And I feel like, video, cable, broadcast is having its music moment, its 2000 music moment, where it is going to change. It's not going to be the same. New models are emerging. New content creators are emerging. AI is emerging. I know you want to touch on that, Bruce. They're trying to shut it down. They're trying to hold on. They love this thing that's worked so well in TV for 60 years, in streaming for 25 years. They're not going to let it go easy, but they're going to lose out if they don't evolve and adapt. And history has shown they don't do that easily.
But aren't they trying to do that? Right? I mean, on the one hand, they don't want to give up the analog dollars for digital dimes. And if you look at the cable affiliate fees versus streaming, that's what it is. But at the same time, that's the point they're making, right? We're investing all this money in streaming and it doesn't pay for it yet. And so we need the cable bundle. Of course, the MVPDs are saying, well, wait a minute, I'm paying you so you could build up a competitor and put me out of business? What are you talking about? How does all that play out?
But most of that money that they're doing is being put into paid streaming, which has also reached its plateau, right? I've done a lot of subscription businesses, and I came up with this term called terminal velocity. Terminal velocity is when your new subscribers and the amount of people that churn out become equal. And every subscription business in the world will hit terminal velocity. And Netflix hit it. They hit it a couple of years ago. They're just not going to get bigger. They're global. All the people who wanted it signed up for it. And now they have to find alternative models. And I do think in the traditional premium streaming services, they're the biggest winner. I do think, Michael, even though you don't like, the leadership at Google, I think you're underestimating the asset of YouTube. and its business. YouTube TV, I agree, that's just trying to be cable, and that doesn't even make sense for them, in my opinion. But I think they're missing where things are going. We haven't talked about fast-supported TV yet. Amagi is a big player in that. I think that's a beneficiary of everything that's happening today. But they need to pay attention to where things are going, not just hold on to what they had.
Bruce, I absolutely agree with Richard and Michael. In terms of bundling is going to be a new way of discovery. I think what we are not factoring is the role that technology will play in terms of discovery of content. We are taking the current model where in TV it's so difficult to discover content, so we think, hey, there should be a way for bundling, and that's the only way. Think about the mobile app world, right? We have thousands and tens of thousands of apps, and a lot of them are profitable. They could be subscription, they could be advertising. And all of us use different apps for different purposes. The problem with TV is that there is just no easy way from a technology user interface perspective for you to get to where you want, so that you can have a long tail of content sustain itself. You can have a massive amount of studios that could actually still get to their fan bases, to their audience, much easier than what they are doing today. Once that technology problem is solved, I think the model will dramatically shift in terms of being able to sustain a much larger set of content studios and reaching and being profitable in each one of those as well.
Yeah, I agree with you on that, because you think about the internet before search, when Yahoo was just, the way to find websites was Yahoo, which was a list of all the websites you should go to, and then the GeoCities and all that stuff, and that's the way we found stuff. And then we had this new technology that crawled websites, and all of a sudden, everything changed. So I think you're right. There's going to be another technological innovation that's going to make content discovery pretty easy, and then that'll turbocharge things.
I agree in terms of bundling for discoverability. That would be great as a user. I've been saying that for years. And Srini, I agree with you in terms of bundling, and again, in terms of accessibility. But I'm not sure that I agree that it means therefore the money will flow. Right? I mean, it depends. There's only X number of people who are going to want to watch the streaming service called The History of the Paper Cup. And no matter how easy it is to find all episodes of The History of the Paper Cup, it's probably a pretty limited number. And, I don't know that that's going to be sustainable. And Michael Pachter, does this mean that we're going to see a lot more consolidation? I mean, let's think back to the cable days. There were scores or hundreds of cable networks, different companies, not the MVPDs, the programmers. It all got consolidated down to 7 companies. Now it's probably 5. Are we going to see the same thing with streaming?
Eventually, yes. I think the egos of the guys involved right now are way too large for anybody to say, I need to do this. And if anybody probably has the DNA to do it, it's Warner Discovery, because they kind of started as a roll-up. And I think Zaslav knows that he comes from the inferior content side. He's a superior business guy, but so I think that he is the guy who would be on the lookout to consolidate. He doesn't have any money, so I don't know how they get it done. So the balance sheets make it really tough. Ultimately, though, yeah, it's each guy saying I'm going to stand alone on my content. Nobody except Disney has enough content. HBO does because they do it so well. Paramount doesn't. Peacock doesn't. And those services are a joke. And I think Zaslav might be the guy to figure that out. Iger would if he was, 20 years younger, but I think he's just, looking at the exit and wondering when he's allowed to leave. And he picked a complete idiot to replace him, and he let Kevin Mayer go. So, I don't know who's going to be the consolidator. TikTok will be the consolidator. I don't know who's going to be. Laughing, but somebody's got to do it. And the guy who has the balance sheet, Apple could do it. I just don't think they have any interest in that. That's not what they want to be. They want to collect.
They're going to buy Disney?
Why?
I think
I don't think they will. I don't think they
Iger will want to sell it to Disney. I'm sorry, to Apple. The question is, will Apple want to buy it from him? I think he probably even came back with that as sort of his exit plan. I mean, Michael P., you know, signed an extension to his agreement. And I did compliment him earlier, but an idiotic move was putting Chapek in charge and not Kevin Mayer.
Yes.
And some believe if he doesn't sell it to Apple, that he's going to, quote, acquire Candle. And in acquiring Candle Media, he's going to bring in Kevin as CEO and Tom as CFO, which is probably how it should have been 4 or 5 years ago in the first place.
And those two guys are so capable.
Yes.
But why would a tech company want to buy a business that, as we've just said, is in secular decline, that the few assets that aren't worth anything, do not outweigh all the things that are dragging it down? If you're Apple, I mean, I'll just hire some producers and make some great shows. Why do I want to buy all these cable networks that nobody wants? And all these TV stations?
Why did Amazon buy MGM? You can say MGM. It's a second-tier network, studio.
Yeah, but that's an $8 billion acquisition. We're talking. You're talking about a $300 million acquisition. Why would I buy a $300 million media company where 90% of it, as Michael P. said, is crap? So it doesn't make. I mean, if I'm an Apple shareholder, I'd be like, no. Put that money into Vision Pro. Put that money into something that's really going to make money for us, not buying these dinosaur media companies.
I mean, why does Apple even have Apple TV? I personally think it's second run to everybody else.
It's a marketing.
The quality is there, but there's no content. There's nothing.
Yeah, but you're looking at it maybe the wrong way. It's a marketing tool. It's like at NPR, we have something called Tiny Desk concerts, which we make no money on. It's actually a pure expense for us. But it's a huge play for the brand, because a lot of people under 40 who never check out, KCRW or NPR love watching Juvenile or Taylor Swift on Tiny Desk concerts. So we invest a lot in making original music content to build the brand. So I think that's Apple's. They don't care whether you like it or you think they're a good studio or whatever. If it helps sell more iPhones, that's why they're doing it.
Michael Smith, just to be clear, I did not say Apple should or would buy Disney. I think Disney would like to be bought by Apple.
Yeah,
but I don't think Apple's going to do it.
And the fact
and Bruce, just to be clear, right? There's Apple TV, which is not the Apple TV Plus service. That's the box or the.
Yeah, I meant the service.
Yeah, Apple TV Plus, the service. Yeah,
I forgot all about the box actually.
Yeah, I mean
do they still make and sell that?
They do.
Yeah, it's a great product, but unfortunately,
if I may also, let me challenge this, right? The fact that, hey, these content partners actually have, these content owners, streamers have unsustainable business models, right? And that would change. The assumption is that we will need consolidation because the business models are unviable. But think about it, right? The second you start bundling, what's the value of a bundle, right? That you could actually sell content that otherwise was not watched along with it, and it created retention. Right. So you had minimum churn because you needed something out of the bundle so you don't actually churn out. Right. As somebody starts bundling some of these services, we have seen Verizon trying to do this plus play, the Charter deal in this example that we just talked about is potentially a bundling. So maybe once all of these guys start consolidating their bundling, then the content investment will go down. They don't need to produce as much content because people are coming in for the bundle and somebody is producing some content, hopefully that keeping them interested and preventing them from churning. So there is dramatic reduction in terms of content investment that they have to make. That's on one side. Think about the other way. The business models themselves could evolve. Think about when you're doing a subscription to a retail company. Think about the Amazon Prime retail, the retailer, not the video side, or a Costco or any of these guys, where you pay a subscription as a way to get access to the platform. And then you pay on a per unit basis when you're buying buying something at Costco or Amazon Prime. Maybe you will have a model on SWOT where you will have all your content, older archive library available as part of the subscription, but you'll pay for the new movie premiere, for the new season, an extra $1, right? So there are multiple ways in which the models could evolve. I think it's still very, very early. I know streaming has been around for a long time, but I think from a life cycle perspective, the entire business is very early, and I think the business models will evolve to provide sustainability.
Right. So fair enough. So Srini, how do you see the bundle then evolving? Who's going to do that? What does it look like?
Again, my view, there are obviously 2 or 3 clear candidates, right? One is the cable guys. The cable guys already have a billing relationship with the consumer. It's much easier for them to continue that billing relationship. I mean, we have seen this playing internationally, right? If you go to Netflix, Netflix is working with telcos all over the world. I mean, that's been there. I mean, at least wherever they've actually been very successful in smaller markets. You know, telco bundles have really worked. I mean, look at what Paramount is doing with pretty much telco bundles everywhere internationally. So telcos, cable operators are one clear choice. Second is obviously the device vendors themselves, right? I mean, if I'm Samsung, if I'm LG, if I'm Roku, I could create a bundle that I can actually offer to the consumer because I have the access, the discoverability, if you will, to do. Three is the Amazon Primes of the world that could potentially come in and bundle, and they already YouTube is trying to do this with Max, YouTube TV. So these are the three possible candidates I think that could become the aggregators, bundlers.
Yeah.
I think
I mean,
going back to my metaphor at the start, Bruce, we're having a lot of conversation about which room in the burning estate or house do we think people should run into. I do think before the session's over, we do have to talk about Fast TV.
Go ahead.
I mean, last year it did $4 billion. The projection is by 2027, it'll do $12 billion. So it's the one sector that's actually growing, you know, and growing by 3x in 3 to 4 years is dramatic.
Why? Why is it growing that much?
I think it's growing for a number of reasons. Cord cutting is happening at an accelerated rate. People are tired of paying for so many streaming services. And to your point, Michael P., having a disjointed UI on those streaming services. Cable and broadcast advertisers have taken longer than they should to realize that their 30-second spots are being recorded. And on Fast TV, they're watched because it's linear without skipping. And it's completely free. You get the equivalent of the cable bundle in the early 90s without paying the $80 to $100 a month you used to have to pay to get your 200 channels that you liked. So I think it's a confluence of all those things and better content showing up on Fast TV networks. And Sri, you can probably speak about this better than anybody, given the core of what you guys do. But, you know, it is the shining star in all, you know, broadcast and cable on the decline, paid premium services on the decline, theatrical on the decline. There's one sector of streaming that is on the incline, and I think people have to pay attention to it.
But isn't Fast just what syndicated non-broadcast affiliate TV used to be? It's basically just a second window. It's a way to monetize the second window of content because no one's making original content for Fast service. It's basically just all the library of content that's been made over the last 30 or 40 years, finding a really cool way to monetize it using streaming technology. Because when I turn on Pluto, everything I see, I mean, they're all old TV shows, we found a really great way to monetize, which is we used to do in the old days. We'd run things on NBC and then we'd sell them to Channel 7 and call it syndication. So Fast is just the modern version of syndication
today,
which is great.
Today, right? But if you look at it, I mean, I think historically it all starts with lousy old content, moving to good old content, moving to lousy original content.
Yeah, but there's no revenue.
Really good original content.
But there's no revenue. But the thing that made cable grow is you had a dual revenue stream of ad revenue plus the $85 a month in fees. Fast can't scale the way cable can because it has a single revenue stream of ad support. So until you get another, the majority of the money that goes into the cable ecosystem is not ad revenue. It's people's subscription fees. So Fast is going to hit a ceiling of ad revenue. Now, Fast services can somehow, through the things Srini was talking about in terms of bundling and partnering and being part of telecom packages or part of, you know, special offers and things, can get another revenue stream the way cable channels do. Then I could see it really developing. But you can't run. I've tried to build some Fast channels, and you just can't build you know, a business big enough just on ad revenue in order to make 22 episodes of a scripted TV show or to make it. You know,
so I would disagree. So I spend some part of my time as a venture capitalist with Acrew Capital, and I led a Series A investment in Canela Media 2 years ago. Canela Media has probably a dozen Fast channels at this point. That company is growing dramatically. That company is now doing originals. They've done a couple of originals and they're doing more and more every year. And it's not a single ad source, it's ads and sponsorship. So you're getting, you know, I have a reel running over my left shoulder of TV shows from the 50s, which were all paid for, not by the 30-second commercials, but by the in-show branded advertiser. And I think we're going back to that in a lot of ways. And I think Fast will do well from branded sponsorship of entire shows on top of advertising as well. So I think, Michael Smith, you might be underestimating where it's going.
I
Michael,
completely agree. Given that, I mean, I'm obviously biased towards fast.
Yeah.
For sure, right? But we are seeing, Michael, we are seeing people producing original. We have dozens of customers that are producing originals for fast because it is materially different for them in terms of revenues that they're actually making. We have seen customers doing tens of millions of dollars of revenue, some of them in 9 digits that they're actually making today just on fast. I mean, this just goes back to the traditional broadcast, right? The way TV started, broadcast was all free, and you had super premium programs on broadcast for free, the ABCs and ABCs, right? So it's no different. The problem has been, is there been enough money for you to produce original, to your point, right? So I think as ad dollars shift from traditional linear to much more of CTV, I think you'll have more and more dollars being funneled. That would actually in turn create better original programming, bring in viewership. So you get into this whole positive cycle of one leading to the other.
Michael P.
Yeah, keep in mind that advertisers are going to actually make this decision. And advertisers, used to have the outlet of print media and commercial broadcast television and drive time radio and billboards. And, commercial broadcast is not down by 50%, it's probably down by 30%. But the gap filled by on demand, and billboard is down by half because we're not driving, and drive time radio down by half, and print dead. So they embraced online advertising between 2000 and now. That's saturated. So what do? They have to go where the eyeballs are. So Michael Smith, I completely agree with you. If fast is crap, it's not going to attract eyeballs. But it doesn't have to be good. Netflix isn't good. It's good enough. So all they have to do is give me good enough, which is reality TV shows or reruns I actually want to watch that aren't on any network. And I'll just pick Dick Van Dyke Show. It's not on late night TV. It's not on syndication. Why not? It's funny now, even though it's 1960s. So I think fast is an outlet for advertisers to capture eyeballs. And the old white-haired guys who make the decisions on where to place ads understand TV. The next big opportunity is video games, because that's another 3 billion hours a day of consumption and zero advertising. But they're going to first embrace fast because they get it, and then their kids will embrace video games. Your kid will embrace video games when she's making those decisions on where to place advertising dollars.
And Michael Smith, right? Just where are the dollars going to come from? Last year, there was still $67 billion spent on 30-second spots on cable and broadcast, which shocks me, because we all know that if it's not live sports, live events, or news, people are not watching those spots. And my prediction is that amount of money is going to shift over this next 5 years into other buckets. And I think fast is going to be a beneficiary of that.
Yeah, but at least one large sports league that's saying, hey, they're going to have a couple of games, primetime games actually for free on fast, right? So you're going to see, more and more people, and we have seen internationally as well, where people are saying, I'm not going to have everything in fast, but I'm going to have enough to get those casual fans to be interested so that they will come in and buy my subscription package or get them interested. So you're going to see fast as a way where people market and spending serious amount of money, and that's going to drive a lot of content as well. Sorry, Michael, you're saying.
Yeah, no, I was going to say I think it'll happen. It's funny, Richard, you were saying you sounded like I did when I worked at CBS in the late 80s and cable was coming, and I kept saying, we were saying that people aren't watching broadcast TV, they're all watching cable. The money's going to shift over. And it was so stubborn. It took about 25 years, for cable ad revenue to exceed broadcast TV revenue, even though its viewership was 3 times as high. And it was back to what you were saying, Michael, about the white-haired media buyers, is that it takes a long time, almost a generational change. So even though the numbers on fast are going to be, hockey stick, it's going to be rare. The buyers are really stubborn. The relationships that they have with the John Steinloffs and the other people at the TV at the networks are so strong that they almost, like you said to Michael P. about being stupid. They make decisions that don't make any sense. They buy stuff that doesn't work because they've been doing it for 30 years. So
We've
saw
got
that.
to, we're coming to the end, so we've got to do our lightning round, which is we're going to go around. Each of you take 30 seconds, maybe a minute, well, maybe 30 seconds. What news article did we not cover that you're following that's of interest, and why? Srini, you want to start?
I actually saw an interesting article. In fact, OTT, there was a mailer from OTT X that talked about how is TikTok the future of television? How young people are actually using TV as the second screen and mobile as the first screen. So is that going to drive viewership on TV because they're actually starting to use it as a second screen? So that was really interesting.
Cool, thank you. Richard?
I would say we touched on it, but the AI moment and the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild fight over trying to keep AI out of media, and just what a futile, wasted energy effort that is on their part. Because as Jeff Goldblum said in Jurassic Park, life will find a way. I think in this world, AI is going to find a way into this stuff. And to demand that actors can only be human, I think is just a weird argument for Bryan Cranston to make.
Michael Smith.
This is from a couple of weeks ago. I saw an article about ABC launching a new version of The Bachelor, called Senior Bachelor, where the lead Golden, right? Yeah, he's 71 and the women are all 60 to 70. And to me, it just showed the smartness of hyper targeting your core audience and try to harvest a declining market. So they know that broadcast TV is dying, but its viewers are over 65. But instead of giving up, just lean into it.
Cool. Michael P.
Not news, but I spoke at UCLA's business school on Friday, and I spoke to 200 students, and I asked how many were cable TV subscribers, and I'm not exaggerating, 4 hands went up out of 200. Wow. And I said, how many of you will never have cable? And 196 hands went up. Now, that shocked me because I thought live broadcast was enough to bring in more than that. So that kind of highlights the problem that we've been discussing the last hour, that the content has to be topical and real time and by appointment to get you to sign up for commercial broadcast cable. And I think the content guys are screwing this up royally. So we didn't delve into that enough, but next year.
Cool. I appreciate it. Gentlemen, thank you all for a very insightful and enjoyable session. I'm going to turn it back over to Eric Hansen.
Hey, thanks, y'all. Wow, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Michael Pachter. That was very entertaining and also enlightening. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure the rest of our audience, we got a lot out of that. I'll put you all up against Hoda and Jenna anytime. Maybe next time we can serve you up with a glass of wine so we can really let that thing go. All right. Well, so with that, we'll close things up. Thank you so much, Bruce, Srini, Michael Pachter, Michael Smith,
thanks, everybody.
Richard, for
bye, everyone. Thank you.
Michael Pachter, I hope to be successful enough someday for you to call me an idiot publicly.
I promise I will. As soon as you cross that threshold, I will.
And Richard, I hope to have an office as eclectic and beautiful as yours.
Yes, lots of years of collecting. Yeah.
Thank you.
We can only hope that some of those idiots were watching today. Maybe they'll maybe we can get this thing all sorted out a little faster. Once again, thanks a lot, everybody, for all of our panelists and to Bruce for taking us on that entertaining and enlightening ride down the rabbit hole, over the top, and for the most part, without careening off the rails. We'll be back again for the next edition of The Buzz on October 11th, when another of our favorite hosts, Forbes senior contributor David Bloom, will lead our discussion. You can register to attend this and future episodes from our website at ottx.org. You can find our podcast, of course, on Spotify. I hope you'll join us and invite your friends and colleagues as well to get in on the buzz. OTTX is proud to offer these sessions free to the OTT industry on behalf of our OTTX membership. If you're not yet a member, I want to invite you to head out to the OTTX website, look into becoming one. We have a membership tiers for a broad range of organizations and professionals. Link is now on the chat window for this session. So head on out there right now and take a look. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you all soon.